Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Akil and joining me today is Ray Bogman, Head of Innovation over at Alumio and an amazing human being, very warm as a person to be honest, and he has an amazing track record of over 25 years in tech. We get into the details of how he grew a team to over 75 people globally, leadership, safety, relationship and trust. We get into all of that and more. So enjoy. The responsibility and the weight of 75 people, that's a lot.
That was a lot, true. I mean, I had people reporting into me directly, but in general, I still was hiring a manager actually in India. But still, everybody was reporting directly to me. So I had one-on-ones with them on a regular basis. And besides 2 different time zones, having my new team actually in EMEA and my old team in the US.
Yeah.
So we had double the meetings. So that was ludicrous.
Okay, how was it leading up to actually the breaking point where you're like, I don't have energy anymore?
Well, my body actually was telling me, but I wasn't listening, to be honest, that I had back issues. And I was taking medications for that. But at the end, I had trouble walking at some point.
Really?
And I was going to chiropractors and physios and all those kind of things. But at some point, the body told me, it's like, well, you need to rest. You need to really stop this. And I was just having, I would say personally, now looking back, so much responsibility back to my team. I just wanted to make sure that they were in a good place. And I didn't consider thinking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a pity.
It seems like a pitfall that is also kind of rampant within this industry because we look for people that are very passionate, that hold like a high sense of accountability and responsibility.
Yeah.
And especially for other people and other processes, right? And if you're super passionate, that just goes hand in hand. That's what you look for.
True. And to be honest, I mean, I was doing customer engineering and we had so many customers that were having, a lot of trouble. And some of them actually had my personal phone number.
Oh, yeah.
Not saying that was a good thing. Well, I mean, I felt responsible to them as well because, we grew together on to what point, they were successful. I mean, I got successful, they were successful. And sometimes they were having a burden. And it's like, okay, what's going on there? And at some point, it's like, okay, I have a team, please, let them handle things. But at some point, if there's an escalation running, I mean, they just, they knew where to find me. And from their perspective on, I would say, getting in there, still feeling too much responsibility at some point and feeling not connected anymore to the product where you can actually solve the issue. Because I knew 95% on what's going on, where the issue lied.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's get this fixed. But unfortunately, although my team was doing an awesome job, we were not able to fix it since the product team was not up to speed or having, different priorities. And that makes sense. I mean, that's totally real. But, you can imagine you get exhausted at some point if you want to fix it and you're not able to fix it and still feel responsible.
Yeah. I think that's very challenging.
Yeah.
You told me before the show you are also responsible for this team that was up and running and was running on a global scale.
Yeah.
That was actually started out small and reached that point with 75 people at some point.
Yeah.
How did you manage that in the first place? Like global boundaries are definitely boundaries that are there. Different time zones are always a thing, which can be challenging.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that in the first place?
Well, I mean, the day starts early, and I would say, all the meetings, I would say back in the day, they started on some projects. I think China was one of the first where we started having calls. And these were actually not personally my team, but they reported in through a vendor. And I would say culture-wise, there were relax because they always say yes to everything, which is not a good thing because you really need to look out and see how what they mean and if they still deliver what's expected. And if you go into the time zone on India, I mean, I love these guys. I mean, they were so warm and so hardworking. And true, sometimes you need to be careful with them because they always say yes as well, but they still do the work, deliver. But I don't want to exhaust them because some of them actually started working 2 shifts, the early
shit.
shifts, and then going into the US shift. So really need to be careful there. That's why they switched managers. I was looking for a new one. Actually went in to Bangalore, to Mumbai, doing some interviews personally. And at the end, unfortunately, there was no budget left. So they still started reporting back to me again.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a good thing for me personally. And then going into Europe and Americas. And I guess every culture has their own pros and cons. The one that I really personally like, and not saying that the other ones are dislikes, but the Polish ones, man, those guys are strict to the point and they work really hard. And they deliver. But again, with all respect to everybody has their own style.
Yeah.
But this one really stood out for whatever sense. But it was fine working with so many different nationalities, cultures, styles. I would say the diversity within was the thing that made me happy, because hearing these personal stories, people getting youngborns and seeing how they grow within their personal career and have challenges, definitely through COVID, working from home, hearing the baby cry, in the other room, but still want to focus and deliver. So sometimes it can be challenging, but I would say establishing the bond with them up until now. I mean, some of the guys, we became good friends, and actually I think a couple of weeks ago, I was in Dubai and met with one of my old architects. And still, I mean, the connection from back in the day, it's still there. So you pick up where you left. And I think that's remarkable to establish that relationship and that trust.
Yeah, it says a lot. And I think it says a lot specifically about you, because from what I've seen, when teams are diverse, like the outcome can be greater, but it's only under good management. And it does require extra time and effort, right? If everyone is like me, then probably we're immediately coming to the same conclusions and we can start faster and we can execute faster. But if it's diverse, you have to accommodate for people's different thought patterns and make sure to include them specifically, which might require more time.
True. Well, maybe a note on that. You started mentioning a word, managing them. I never saw that I was managing them.
Yeah.
And actually, this morning I had a call with an old colleague of mine, and we actually have done these projects together back through the COVID days, and establishing that team. But the thing that really stood out, and I sometimes refer back to my team, maybe more as a coach, and that I asked them, it's like, if we want to be successful and get like a Champions League team up and running, we are doing this together. I mean, nobody stands out and kicks the goal. True, somebody at some point makes a good success, but at some point, looking back at the Champions League, and I sometimes even use the picture of the Champions League within my presentations, like, we are doing this together. Everybody's equal, but we have one goal in mind, and that's being successful with the customer and doing this together. And nobody leaves, nobody stops. Again, it's a family. So I saw myself maybe more as a coach or trainer than being that manager. I don't like the term actually to be manager.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful, right? Because you want to, if you call yourself a manager, if you, let's say, manage, then there's already a hierarchy there.
Yeah, true.
So how can people actually build that relationship with you when there is that boundary innately?
Oh, 100%. And the funny thing is, there's this comic, I guess, if you find on the internet, what's the difference between a leader and a boss? And a leader is the one leading the team. And I think that's what a coach or trainer does as well. He's not in a hierarchy on top and, commanding to whatever degree, needs to be done. It's team effort. You do this together.
Yeah. I've, since last year, kind of in January, switched from software engineering to product management. And some stuff I really enjoy when it comes to figuring out the why and actually going for value, specifically with a team, and then delivering that. But I miss the fulfillment of delivery. Like when someone praises the team, it's like, or praises me, I'm like, okay, but like I feel like I barely contribute, even though I am kind of behind the scenes orchestrating things. That part of fulfillment of delivering is different in this way.
Yeah.
Was that for you as well? Because even the scale of things were different and global as well.
Well, that's a really good question. Well, interesting point is that at the end, the customer asks, what they want. And based on that, well, everybody has their own skill set, I would say. And based on that, we went along and say, okay, for this customer, we need to have this. For that customer, we need to have that. And actually, if you get all those, I would say, team members again in line, creating the vision together and let them establish, what needs to be done. Actually, nobody was left behind. Even the QA or the product owner or whatever person within that organization had a tremendous impact in the bigger picture. It was not just the one who deployed the code and said, okay, we are live, we've done it.
Yeah.
Well, thumbs up. But, there's a whole big, amount of task before that needs to be successful. And I think that's something, and I think it's great that you mentioned, you change profession as well, and through every role has their own thing. But I think it's important as a trainer, leader, coach, for that matter, to get everybody on board and make sure what the vision, the aim, the objective is to work it towards.
Yeah, for me, that's one of the single most things, like if I were to pick one learning, it's that a common goal really unites people.
Yeah.
And there needs to be clarity,
Yeah.
right? And the role of whomever that is that conveys that goal is to provide that clarity.
Yeah.
Because if things are unclear, either people make assumptions or there's noise on the line and people just don't buy in as much. When things are crystal clear, you can see, okay, we're a common goal. We work together towards this. If something else comes in, people know what the priority is because this is the goal, and they act independently as well.
Well, maybe goal objectives true. Personally, I think sharing a vision is a little bit broader because you can have a goal or objective for the next 6 months, I would say.
Yeah.
But sharing the bigger picture from a strategic standpoint, where do we stand now and where we want to go? And I think the projects that I've led definitely throughout the COVID days was a big project in the Middle East. It was clear they didn't have any visibility online because since they were just in the physical stores, but then COVID hit and everything needed to go online. They had something like, okay, we need to make sure that not only for the short term, but also for the long term, we need to scale, and that doesn't happen within a year.
Yeah.
So I think in total, I've been on this project a little bit over 3 years, I guess. And still then, while changing roles, I was still involved in that. But sharing that vision with the team in the beginning helps to set a bar back to the team where you can create small goals or objectives for the period in between, but still have the long vision and on the horizon. I would say, that I would say back to the team members that help them to not give up, but see that if something didn't work, and true, we made mistakes as well, but growing not only from our part, but also from the customer's part, actually we became much closer. And then I think the turning point was after a year and a half, everybody saw, not saying the light, sounds a little bit holistic, but at some point it's like, wow, now we see that the things are turning and we're becoming more stable and we are more respectful to each other because, sometimes establishing relationship between the vendor and the team, trust, I would say, doesn't happen in a week, doesn't happen in a month. It's that relationship that you build. And from that turning point on, it's like, okay, we trust you, you trust us. Now let's see, let's make it happen. And then things started changing. And then at some point, I think we were definitely after Black Friday, I think we grew 1,700%, I would say, from an e-commerce perspective.
Wow.
And that was unheard of. I've never seen these numbers, but it doesn't happen overnight.
No. Zooming into that vision then, is that something that comes from the business? Is that something that comes from you? Is that something that is kind of a collaborative effort and is a shared vision that gets created? Or how does it exist and where does it come from?
That's a really good question. True, there's a simple answer that somebody needs to define the vision. Yeah. But I would say it's again the magic that happened on this project actually, where and not saying that it was a coincidence, but actually the CTO, he was a Dutch guy, although he was on the road with his family for I would say almost 20 years, maybe. Not sure if that's correct, but I mean, he wasn't located in the Netherlands, but he was Dutch.
Yeah.
But he was actually living in Kuwait back then. But establishing that relationship between him, my strategic advisor, her name is Marion. She was awesome. So doing this together, I was learning a lot about the strategic component, where I knew the technical component, the business component, but she was able to help modify and get that vision across within their organization.
Yeah.
And while speaking the same language, true, that helps, but true. I mean, in the beginning, actually, they were a little bit like, okay, let's see, deliver. But actually, once that vision was established, it's like, okay, this is the overall vision that we have in mind. And they were sharing, they were being transparent. And I think that's really important. Not saying that you should share everything, but I think the more you share, the better it is for a vendor to deliver at the highest level possible. Because, if you withhold on some pieces, it will not work.
Yeah.
So I would say establishing that, and I think it took maybe also a year to get that connection, and from that, even up until now. I mean, although I left the company, he left the company, we sometimes text, and then we go for a run on the beach, wherever we are, and that's kind of funny. Once you've established that relationship, not saying that that's the same as a friendship, but I guess it's similar, where if you're friends with each other, you trust each other. And that's the same thing with a relationship from a business standpoint. Once you start trusting each other, you can establish that vision, and then that vision can be shared to the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And then you have this holistic overall view together where we need to go.
Yeah. I'm curious, because you mentioned you can't necessarily share everything, but also I'm curious when you share, because if things are still in progress, do you share when the vision for you is, let's say, crystal clear, or do you bring people along so it can become a shared vision, and if you take them along, you have a higher chance of getting buy-in that way?
Yeah, true. But again, and I think respect to him, back to the organization, but I've seen that these sometimes struggle as well, because the different parts within the organization where people have different visions.
Of course.
And visions can change. And that's not a good thing. That's not a bad thing, sorry. That's not a bad thing. But I think adapting to the vision, but sharing the vision back to the team, not saying that needs to change or be consistent, but I've noticed, definitely from an engineering perspective, if you keep changing the vision, your team, they go wild.
They scatter.
They scatter. It's like, what's going on? I mean, we had, A, we B. So keep the team as stable as possible. Keep the holistic vision shared to them, and the details and how we do this, that can be shared on a management level, I would say, or an executive level.
Gotcha. I've noticed that things like execution, they very much are within development teams, but things like strategy and vision, sometimes they are being shared continuously, transparently, to the point of fulfillment, but sometimes they're also not shared. And then the expectation to execute is there, yet there is no time to actually educate people and have the patience to bring people along in that way.
Oh, I like this one. Actually, this reminds me on a different project, and to really keep it simple. And that's something I've mentioned several times back to not only my teams or other projects. Once the vision of the company and the vendor are aligned, you can do magic. But if the knowledge is not the same, it's like, the balance. Where are we, let's say, as a vendor, and where's the we are there. If that's not aligned, I mean, you can still talk the same language, but it will never line up. So I always say, make sure that you're on the same level from the communication standpoint, and you understand what we're talking about, technically or business-wise. And from their perspective on, I think it's great to get into the weeds, do the discovery, get all the workshop done, and then start drafting the whole plan that needs to be built. But if you are not aligned, you will end up on so many issues along the way that leads into discussions and leads into hard discussions. And it's a mismatch. Yeah,
it's hard to see, I think, from inside out, if you are aligned, because probably from a leadership standpoint, you think you are, and then from the groundwork, you might think it's odd, right? But you have to have an equal level of communication and actually a conversation person to person, right?
Yeah.
We first have to connect person to person before we connect whatever role we have, and then try and execute.
Funny thing is, I've shared this with my team, and well, now it's great to share this as well. The software actually doesn't do anything. It's the team and the members that make it happen. So by itself, I mean, you can have software, but I mean, it's the way you interpret it and how you create it, or how you customize it based on the requirements.
Yeah.
And that's us. That's human beings. So if I'm not understanding, I would say, the specifications well enough, I probably will create technical debt, which is a cost component, which is not efficient. So the more, I'm not saying you should waste time as much as possible in the beginning, but be as precise as possible based on the knowledge level. If the knowledge level on both levels are the same, it's kind of difficult sometimes, but at least, try as much as possible. Then these requirements and specifications will lead into a better product.
Yeah, that's always been like the challenge for me, also looking at a product stance, because we can, for example, work on a new objective, and therefore I'm putting everyone in the same room, stakeholders and development team. But then I've noticed that things might be a little bit too early, where things go in every which way with regards to this objective that we have and how we want to solve it. And the feedback of the engineering team is like, this is too early. Like, the business is still not ready.
Yeah.
And from the business side, it's like, this was a bit of a mess, and we need a bit more time.
Yeah.
So then I've pivoted and I said, okay, who's interested and who wants to go like in a complete journey from the engineering team? And some people say yes, and some people say maybe later, and then we collaborate later on. And I'm experimenting with that to see what fits, like bringing everyone on where we're from point zero, or starting when we're at like 20% of the way, or when things are clear 50% of the way. And because I want that technical expertise, because then we can steer and look at feasibility. But it takes time. And it takes patience.
100%. Funny thing is, the thing you just mentioned, actually in my brain, something popped up. And that's a comic. And that's a comic that I still refer to sometimes from a book called Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug. Actually, maybe we can share it later on. But there's a really nice comic how different departments communicate with each other within the project. And everybody has their own responsibility and focus on well, this is me. But at the end, it's everybody together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. And that's why I like the title as much, Don't Make Me Think. If everybody does the due diligence and cohesively work together, you can deliver this, not saying perfect product, but at least it gives a little bit more quality to what needs to be delivered.
Yeah. In the end, like, I think experimenting like that and seeing what people's preferences are is good, because it also kind of matures your processes and your way of working as a team.
100%.
I don't think there's a silver bullet. I come in with a gut feeling. That's definitely my approach. Is like, okay, I know a lot from software engineering. Now I'm doing product. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with achievements. And sure, things don't always go the right way, and then we steer. But I keep an open mind and I keep an open book, and I'm very transparent with what I communicate.
Well, that's important.
When things go awry, I'll just there's no need to hide it. There's no benefit in hiding it. So I don't.
No. Yeah. Learn from doing. I mean, true. I mean, we are human beings. Let's be real. I mean, if something goes bad, I mean, own it, learn from it, and grow.
Yeah.
Because that's the way we can, get this. What's the term again? Psychological safety.
Yeah.
Once we have the psychological safety within the team, you're open and transparent enough to grow and learn from any mistakes that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get into hiring, because you're responsible for setting up and growing a team globally. I get a lot of questions from people that are abroad, either in Asia or South America, and they want something stable at a bigger company, which is not in their region, let's say.
Yeah.
They say, how can I distinguish myself? Specifically, let's say they're a software engineer, potentially they are more early in career. How would you look at it from a hiring perspective, or how can they stand out from the crowd there?
That's a good question. There's a simple and maybe difficult answer to that question. Let me start with the simple one. I mean, I was working with Magento, Adobe Commerce, the software.
Yeah.
So hiring somebody who has the skills or the certification, that really helps. That stands out. And even in resumes that I've read, they had Linux, all those additional requirements that helped to distinguish, is this guy or girl or person the best person to hit it. Even repositories on GitHub help to review the quality of the code they created, or maybe even the contribution within the community, because we had a wide community where software was shared, since it's open source. That helps a lot to see, what's the level of knowledge this person has, and adapting that. That's the simple answer. So, getting a qualified person that has 6 years of knowledge, well, true. I mean, and he's a great guy, well, get on board.
Yeah.
The difficult one is if you are looking within roles on requirements that are not as specific as Magento. Let's say I'm looking for a product owner that needs to have, let's say, 5 or 10 years of product knowledge, and he needs to create a SaaS, multi-SaaS solution. So something totally new.
Yeah.
Developing something from scratch, definitely within cloud and SaaS nowadays. I would say there's not a lot of people on their resume that can say, well, I've built 6 SaaSes.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, yeah.
Okay. So having an understanding, but also having a creative mind and being open-minded from a creativity standpoint and analytic standpoint, it's hard to describe in a resume. Mm-hmm. So what I've done, actually, I had different questions, written up. And I was having an interview kind of similar like this one, Let's say I give you this case. What comes across? How do you handle that? And to be honest, I think in some cases it's important for me, definitely for specific roles, to be more analytical and be creative and be open-minded on, well, maybe I don't have the solution, but I can find a solution for you. Or maybe I have components and work with other guys on the team to find that. That established trust, ownership, and the personal thing that I like is entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe because I was an entrepreneur back in the day, but that entrepreneurial skill set, that's unique. You don't need to have 10 people that are entrepreneurial in team, because actually then you don't get built anything. But having 1 or 2 that have that skill set helps them to get a strong relationship with team and get things done. Because at some point you need to get things done instead of just getting in a room and getting into a whiteboard and just creating diagrams, and at the end you don't have a solution yet, because at some point you need to start delivering.
Yeah.
And I think that helps, depending on the role, what quality set. Because if I'm looking for a product owner or scrum master, it's pretty clear. Actually, they don't mind on what the software looks like. They just want to make sure that they are able to manage this, deliver this in a sprint, on cadence, etc., etc. So I guess it depends on the role, what you're looking at, and if the personality matches that. Well, back to the Champions League analog. Is this the person within the team that's a cultural fit that makes it happen? And I personally, I don't care where they located. If they are that team player that makes the difference within the bigger picture, I mean, you're mine.
So zoom in on that. Like, how much of that can you actually train or develop, or how much is just there already?
Well, that's a really good question. I would say, if you asked me this question several years ago, I would say, well, I don't know. Maybe it's there, maybe it isn't. But actually, I've read a couple of books over the last couple of years. And if you look at neurodiversity, it's kind of interesting to see how, and again, with all respect to all the listeners out there, everybody has their own brain. The type of brain is unique. So if you look into a brain type where somebody has dyslexia, like myself, and if you have ADHD, so everybody has their own blueprints. Actually, that blueprint defines, because it's there by birth, defines on what you're good at. Funny thing is, couple of years ago, and maybe you recall, we had COVID, of course, and then we had a big issue at Schiphol where we had luggage issues.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, in the local newspaper, NRC, there was an article which mentions like, well, maybe it's better now to send a dozen of dyslexia people to Schiphol because they're able to fix that issue.
Okay.
And the reason why is it seems that people with dyslexia, they have an extraordinary analytic brain that helps solving issues in a really creative way.
Okay.
So again, every brain is unique. Would a dozen dyslexia people within the team work? Well, maybe, but I would say you probably don't get any delivery yet. So you need to have these, autistic people at some point, which is not a bad thing because they're really good, they're really precise, they're really quality driven. Create a good match. And I think that helps us now, definitely within engineering, to establish that foundation that makes sense on all levels.
Mm. I think I understand what you're getting at. It's just very hard for me to think of that and to put into practice, right? Because I think either you're going to start from scratch and then you're going to hire people that are, depending on your strategy, either similar like you or have some similar components and values, but are diverse and people you can learn from and look up to in certain other areas. And at some point you're going to have a team, and then it's a matter of, okay, how can someone enhance this team, or how can this take a team to a next level? And I don't know how I would do that in practice.
Well, I guess it's also learning and doing. I mean, I wouldn't say if I would created this team 10 years ago, I probably would have done it differently. But I guess over the years, well, not only getting older or more mature or getting enough knowledge and seeing multiple projects around the globe, it helped me to look at the person individually and see how that person is thrilled. I mean, actually, funny thing is now within my new role, 2 days ago, I had a meeting with a new colleague and I let him introduce himself. And at the end, I was asking him, it's like, what would you change right now within your role? What would make you happy or what doesn't make you happy? And I met this person just 30 minutes ago, but just asking him if there was something that he would like to change, he never had that question being asked.
Yeah.
And he all of a sudden like, oh, interesting. So if I'm being responsible for my personal success, what would I change?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's important to ask this question back to team members, not every week, because that would be insane. But asking that gives a little bit of the momentum, looking him in the eye, although this was on Teams, and he goes like, and the thinking moment sometimes help how quickly he reacts and what does he say. Yeah. And actually that defines on how do people react within different changes within the organization and how can they fit in better or, I mean, true, again, there needs to be a click, but actually these kind of questions opens up people. So I started learning, asking different questions, still not saying that I know everything, not at all. Yeah. There's still much to learn, but I noticed that asking these kind of silly questions helps me, but also helps them to start gaining trust a little bit because I need to build that relationship with them. And that takes time.
Yeah. I was thinking the exact same thing. As you were going it, I was like, this is going to build trust. Yeah. And I've seen it, right? I've even done it in job interviews where it's very much on the job. You tell a little bit about yourself because that's just part of, let's say, an interview question. And then you have the opportunity to ask questions. Yeah. And I ask questions about the job, but also about the person. I want to know how this person sees their role in the organization, what they're most proud of, because then I can kind of estimate, okay, what type of impact is going to be appreciated, or in general, how's it going to be like working with this person, right? Yeah. You build a small relationship just by having a conversation, and you do that bit by bit until there is trust. Indeed. And I think that can be very much, it's valued over time.
Oh, 100%. I mean, again, it's not about the relationship business-wise, but it's just a human interaction. I mean, you probably meet a lot of people on your way to work or maybe in a bar that you've never met before. And if the connection is right, the connection is right. And that's the same, meeting a new person at a new job. Establish that, see where they feel comfortable and build a trustworthy relationship from that. And you don't need to be friends, I would say, but be respectful, be interested, be genuine. I think that's most important.
Yeah, I think those you definitely have, but you can also say, okay, that's what I want to get better at, and you can experiment doing.
Yeah.
I want to get into the knowledge aspect of things, because I think this tech field is very unique in that, and I don't have a lot of experience in other fields, but it's continuously learning and developing, right? New technology comes out. We're now, especially with Gen AI, I feel like already I stepped out of software engineering for 1 year and people are talking about vibe coding, and I don't have the pros and cons because I haven't done that hands-on for a year. Things move fast. Like you have to be educated and keep educating yourself.
A funny thing is, we are recording this now. Actually, looking back last, I would say 4 or 5 days, I was lucky enough to visit AWS Summit in Amsterdam on Wednesday. And every day there's an event. There's so many things going on continuously. And then reading newsletters. And all of a sudden, it's like, please, is that pause button? I've never within, I would say, the software space, the pace on software being released at this moment, it's just too high.
It's insane.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, and maybe interesting for our listeners over here, and this really stood out. There was one presentation on AWS Summit by an organization called Poolside, Poolside.ai, and they claim, again, with all respect, that they created not only a foundation model on AI, but also be the tool itself for engineering. And what do they mean? Now I would say Gemini and DeepSeek and all the big models out there, they have the option to develop code. But it seems that the quality of code isn't that good. I want to be respectful again to all the solutions out there, all the listeners. The funny thing is, again, this is what I've seen throughout the presentation. They're just in the middle, the sweet spot. So they create the code, but being developed on your code. So you actually have this solution now only within AWS available, when you can train your personal code, and it keeps being well fine-tuned, trained, optimized from that perspective on, but establishes, and that's the prediction they have, much higher quality of code, which would define, and I was thinking already, it's like, okay, if let's assume that the quality of code would be 90%, you could fire or not hire, depending on how you look at it, within your own team. So imagine 2-3 years from now, if we have this model which is 90% accurate, you just give it your code or history of code, you create a really good prompt, and it starts building this multi-model functionality in whatever language. How remarkable would it be? And then the thing is, was also demonstration. Now we into multiple agents, agentic.
Yeah.
You might have heard of it. Would these agentic agents be QA agents? Or even deliver a performance test? Or not only deliver the performance test, but initially deploy all the code that's necessary to do a high performance load test? The scenarios are wild. So
pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Cool.
From a future perspective, I'm thrilled. I'm always like, wow, cool.
Yeah.
But from a business perspective, and that was a discussion that I heard as well this week. I think it was Bill Gates who mentioned that if we are going into these virtual robotics and we're not hiring people anymore, what's the impact? And do these virtual robots needs to be charged from a taxing standpoint? Because all of a sudden, it's great that we are delivering these virtual robots, but true. I mean, business-wise, we're not hiring anybody, although we are having so many human beings available, but we're not using them. So it was kind of interesting to see again within a week what's changing, what diversion economically, politically, technically are happening. I would say sometimes, is there a pause button to just recap and say, what's the next strategy? Because every week I need to rethink my strategy. So I think it's important for me within my current role as head of innovation to be ahead of the curve, but also be cautious enough on what would make sense for the long run, where my engineers, our engineers, are working on a solution that not only gives them a job, I would say, feels having a cause, a goal, a vision that they're working towards, being successful as a human being from a career perspective, and not being nervous on what's happening around them in an ecosystem. Because I'm hearing too many people like, maybe I'll lose my job, with this whole AI thing.
Yeah.
That's not a good, thing within your organization, because nervous people, with all respect, they can do bad things. Not saying that they want to, but personally, it's something that's just by nature. So be cautious on that. So again, it's great to have these great, enormous times, but we are going really quick.
yeah, for sure. I feel like with AI, what we've seen is indeed a reduce in headcount. I hope that we move towards a future where we build more things. I think there's a lot of things that we can improve. There's a lot wrong with the planet, which we can fix, and software can help with that. Yet we do focus on making money specifically. And a lot of solutions are very similar across organizations because we're solving the same problem with people in software along the same lines.
Yeah.
E-commerce is a huge example of that. And everyone needs it. But to create your own kind of custom version or to get something off the shelf and have people do it, that is kind of formulaic, and that is what AI will be good at.
Yeah,
I think it's a shame that we cut in headcount and that we don't use people more effectively. Like if all of a sudden your people become more productive, why don't you try more things? Why don't you do more instead of reducing the headcount that you have and then optimizing for what you already do? So I think generally we will try and trailblaze more because that is also what AI is not good at, right?
Oh, 100%.
When there
100%.
are a lot of examples, that's what it gets really good.
Yeah.
But when things are new and when things are innovative, things are not there yet within a model.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So that's going to be a difference maker.
Well, the question is, what's going to be there 5 years from now within the model? We don't know yet.
Yeah.
I mean, true. I mean, we can think about it. It's kind of interesting to, see the future.
Yeah.
But one thing that keeps standing out, a human being is unique. The knowledge, the personality, the trust. Again, in customer care, who do you trust? Do you trust the bot? And everybody's smart enough to figure out after maybe, 5 replies. It's like, okay, I want to speak to a human being.
Yeah.
I want to build a relationship. I want to build trust. Not saying that everybody should work now in customer care, but again, having a trustworthy relationship with a company, with a brand, I would say that establishes, the quality of the business, not only the AI or the robot or whatever.
Yeah. I think if people have this kind of learning mindset, right? And even though some jobs might become obsolete, roles will also evolve, right? Instead of doing the hands-on work, you might oversee an agent or something AI related that does it for you. And then you have to see if there's trends or if we can improve with regards to the business outcomes. So your role, instead of doing the work yourself, becomes kind of more high over and more orchestrating.
True. Interesting thing is, and maybe I'm turning around a little bit, wouldn't it be a bad thing? And I was even looking in the mirror myself. It's like, okay, I grew up with tech. I love tech. But actually my study goes back into hospitality management, working with human beings.
Yeah.
And I think on the job market, there's a big miss in electricians, plumbers, other people out there, with all respect. I think there's so many crafted goodmanship out there, which get lost, more or less. I think it's good that we look at what the level of need is within our, I would say, profession globe, but also direct towards that. I mean, let's face it, IT, it's a well-paying job. Why did I change profession? Well, the pay was better than within hospitality.
Yeah.
And I was good at it. But would I go back? Yeah, maybe. Kind of interesting. Not saying I'm sure what I want to do, but maybe we need to look at leveling, I would say, the income back to other jobs. Because you can imagine if an IT job would pay as much as a plumber, I would say that a lot of people probably would say, okay, cool, let me be a plumber. You know, I like to get out there. Not saying that it's simple. I mean, I've looked at the technicians on some jobs out there, and they need to be technical as well. But I think it's good that we keep a good eye on what AI does and how we maybe derail some roles back to other professions where there's a big need. You know, even in the caring department, medical care department, I mean, there's a big shortage.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a good discussion to see how can we optimize the knowledge of the human being within the economy at this moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think digital would have to play a role to a certain degree, right? Because the reason why tech pays so well is like the impact of what you do goes to a lot of people. Things
True.
that like plumbing doesn't necessarily scale. If you go from house to house, there's only so many houses you can cover within a day. With software, you can reach millions, especially if you do like a mobile app. It goes very quickly.
I know.
And things just don't scale the same way. Like it would have to be something digital that helps there, but I don't know what it would be.
Well, I guess that's the question, you know. You and I are probably not going to figure it out, you know, within this session. But it's an interesting debate, at least, to define what would make sense and how do we teach our children. I mean, even my daughter, I mean, she started in fashion and now she wants to be a digital scientist.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny all of a sudden that not only the profession probably would pay much better and she's interested in the AI stuff and everybody's now doing the AI stuff, but it's good sometimes to have this skill on maybe doing something else. So the question is, you know, first of all, what makes you happy and where is a shortage where you can still, well, be passionate about it?
Yeah, absolutely. On a very side note, like I went to this marketing conference just because I thought it was interesting. And fashion and digital actually crossed there because they said they had digital marketing with digital avatars representing their clothes or the fashion brand's clothes. Yeah. I was like, that's the kind of out of the box thinking that I hope we can do with AI because we solve the same problems and then we look at, okay, how can we do this beyond and do something unique?
But in the fashion industry, I think for several years already, AR, VR. I mean, you just look in the mirror and it creates a copy. These digital mirrors that actually change, you know, create a photo and you just pick the clothes and all of a sudden you're wearing it virtually.
Yeah. That's where I want to go.
Yeah, well, it's already there.
Yeah,
it's already there. It's
I don't have it yet.
It's not in every store. Yeah, but it's already there. I've seen it. But it's remarkable where these technologies still emerge and see how it benefits everybody. But again, it's a gimmick. You know, we don't need it. To be fair, it's great. You know, it's this next big toy that looks fancy, and then probably after a while, you know, we get bored and have seen that toy. But I think they're probably still creating it. The question back, you know, on what makes sense. How do we actually, you know, change maybe the world for a better place at some point? Not being so, but I think having that answer definitely would make sense on how to use AI in that space.
Yeah. As a kind of last thought, before we round off then, let's say you're a listener and you're probably within tech, probably hands-on as a software engineering role, and you see this kind of out there with regards to uncertainty, potentially for your own role, but definitely for the industry, with regards to a technology that is up and coming. What would you advise to such a person that's listening then, with regards to what should they do more on a hands-on, maybe from a learning approach, maybe within their career, or it could even be a mindset thing? What would you say?
Thank you for asking. I think it's a really great question. It's not an easy one. I think, first of all, it's important to define what's your personal interest and not like what your, I would say, parents or teacher might have think of. And Funny thing is, going back personally, I just wanted to go into sports back in the day. It's like, okay, sports is my thing, and my parents didn't agree with that, so I needed to do something else. And I came into hospitality, and then I taught everything within IT, and I'm passionate about IT. But I think it's important to look back. And now, I became 50 last year. I sometimes look back, it's like, okay, what would have happened if I went into the sports arena? Would it help me now? Probably, yeah, because it doesn't affect the whole AI debate. Sports, true, you can go into, but the physical sport activities, being a personal trainer or whatever, or just an athlete, they don't care about AI. True, they probably have tools like the rings that we wear that helps them to recover in a really good way. But at the end, they don't care. So there's a lot of professions out there that don't mind the whole AI debate, which is just a big marketing buzz or this industrial revolution that we are in. So I would say, look in the mirror yourself and ask yourself, like, what's my first passion? And again, my first passion is sports. Would I go back now into sports? Well, maybe, not sure. See what happens. But I think asking yourselves that question, what's your first passion? What's your second passion? What's your third passion? Maybe that helps to define on again, back to the brain discussion, what type of brain do you have? What makes sense? Some people are really well crafted, creating these unique art. Again, they can use AI, but necessarily they don't need it. Depending if they're just creating pictures, but if they're just doing the manual work, again, it's new. But going back to the question, just look in the mirror and ask yourself, what's me and what I want to be.
I think self-reflecting like that and learning more about yourself, I've definitely not done it enough. And it's an ongoing journey even, because interests evolve completely.
Yeah.
What I did and what I wanted to do as a childhood is still there. And your perspectives broaden, right? Especially as you learn from more people, also diverse people, like you evolve. So yeah.
Funny thing is, last thing, if somebody would come up to me and would say, well, can you lead this sports team into a next phase? And I probably will look at it again to the analogy on creating a team and coaching a team.
Yeah.
I probably would say, interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about this at all. But actually, if I'm looking within my heart, I would be passionate about, leading a team. If it's have to pay, probably, yeah. But if it helps me to be passionate about getting the best individual person, on the field or doing whatever, I probably would say, yeah. That's
really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's something we need to look in the mirror ourselves. And maybe, once you start, growing older and true, money is an important thing, but not as important as personal health. And I think asking that question yourself, so all the listeners out there, just put pause, I would say, reflect, look in the mirror and say, what's my first passion? And would I join that first passion if somebody would ask me?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, Ray. This has been a real blast.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise.
Awesome. Then we're going to round it off here. Thank you so much for listening. The best way to support the show is to leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the episode. Leave a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And we'll see you on the next one.